theoretically, it's going to sound crazy, but stock splits aren't supposed to mean anything, actually. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The market interprets stock splits in different ways. They could interpret the split to mean that, the stock price is going to go up. So sometimes splits can cause prices to go up, but that's information that is, that could be some other extraneous information that has nothing to do with the fact that the stock split. Um, so really, stock splits aren't supposed to mean. It's like taking a pizza that is 4 slices and making it into an 8 slice pizza. It's still the same pizza. You can still get the same amount. And by the way, everybody who I see, some of you, let's see who I saw your comment. Somebody said it's not. Oh, Jason says it's not fair. I already signed up. Okay, for those of you who are already in the family pack, if you want the one-on-one, just email support@theblackbusinessschool.com and just say Dr. Boyce said I can have a one-on-one, and we'll do it. I'll do it for you too. So don't, I'll make sure I make it worth your while. So everybody who's already signed up, if you want the one-on-one, I don't want you to feel left out. So feel free to go ahead and just let them know. And we give you guys the benefit of the doubt. So if you say Boyce said to do this, this, and this, they send them something, like send them a screenshot of your receipt or something, so they know you're not just saying stuff. But basically, the goal is to make sure that you guys are happy. And so, we designed this because, so many of you mentioned that this would be something that works for you. And the goal is to shift the culture of your family, because if you change the wealth culture in your family, in this generation, it's going to have a ripple effect that lasts long after you're gone. I mean, the stuff that my grandmother taught me when I was little at 5 years old, and my grandmother didn't know much about investing, but the stuff that she taught me when I was little, that was the seed that led to me becoming what I am now, right? I just took the seed she gave me and I built on that, right? So what I'm saying to you is give your kids something to build on. Give them something other than the stuff that they're getting in the media and in the educational system. Why does it surprise you that our kids end up so stupid? Why does it surprise you? Think about this. They're turning on the radio. They're hearing from rappers that can't even enunciate a word to save their life. Why? Well, because white supremacy picks the dumbest black people to put on the radio, right? That's just what they do. I'm sorry. No disrespect to the Migos, but that's what it is, right? And then they're going to school and they're learning from a bunch of white people who care nothing about them, who know nothing about their history, who have no incentive nor the ability to teach them how to become productive human beings in a black community, right? So they become, they're just there. They're not able to really bring anything to the table, right? And then then they're going out in this economic system where their whole life they've been trained to work for white people. So you've trained them to be slaves. They become slaves of consumption. They become consumer slaves, right? They're trying to buy every new iPhone and every Gucci watch or Gucci belt that comes out, right? They're slaves to media. Black people watch more TV than anybody else. They become slaves to the fast food restaurants. If you ever want to see black people lose their damn mind, just put a Popeye's chicken in the neighborhood and watch what happens. Watch the fireworks go off. I mean, you really want to make, but when the riots happened over George Floyd, I knew black people weren't looting those buildings and burning buildings down and busting windows. Most of us don't operate like that. But if you want to see black people riot, put a Popeye's chicken in a neighborhood and then let the place run out of chicken, right? Seriously, or let the line get too long on a hot summer day and watch how many people get shot. Seriously. So what I'm saying to you is that a lot of these issues can be fixed, right? And we have the ability to fix that. It's going to be fixed. These issues will be fixed by the individuals who understand what it means to build, who understand the importance of capital and what it means to control capital, what it means to acquire assets and resources. We may get a reparations check one day. That may happen. I don't know if we will or not, but we may, right? Because now white people are being extra nice. So I'm like, okay, well, if you're being nice, fine. Like, write that check, and then I really appreciate your kindness at that point. Before then, you're just talking, right? But if you don't get the reparations check, here's the reality. If we were just really obsessed, for one generation, if really obsessed with the acquisition of resources, right? And the building of businesses. Like, if that just became the most important thing in the world for us. Like if we became as obsessed with the acquisition of resources as we are with basketball and football, and became as obsessed with building businesses as we are with, hip hop music on the radio, watch what would happen. What you would see is you would see a multi-trillion-dollar wealth transfer that would occur. Why? Well, because a lot of the wealth game is a game where smart people take money from people who are not as smart. Or better yet, here's a better way to say it so it doesn't sound elitist. Educated people take money from uneducated people. I think that's a better way to say it, right? And educated doesn't just mean, you went to school longer, right? Lots of people go to school and they don't know how to do anything, right? Educated just means you understand your environment and you've put more energy into preparing how to strategize and obtain resources in that environment. I had a friend who was a really smart businesswoman, and she was just super creative and just capable, just a survivor. She could just figure things out, right? And one of the things I noticed about her background is that she grew up without parents. Like her parents, she just got, like you talk about rolling the parental dice, like she just crapped out. Both her mother and her father, both on drugs, both pretty worthless to her as parents. So she would go from house to house to house. And let me tell you what happened when she went from house to house to house. She said it was terrifying. It was really upsetting to even reflect on it because there was so much hurt and pain associated with that. But one thing she learned was how to survive and how to figure things out really quickly. She would get into an environment. She would quickly figure out where the resources were. She would figure out who controlled the resources. She'd figure out who she had to be nice to in order to get access to the resources. So that skill, which came out of tremendous trauma, right, actually became her magical superpower. So a lot of times, see, people want to feel sorry for you when you have trauma. And I do feel bad for you if you've had trauma. Maybe you need to go talk to that therapist. But after you talk to the therapist, I need you to take a moment and reflect on the possibility that perhaps the trauma you went through, the hell that you went through, was really God blessing you with a superpower. I live with a therapist who always wants to feel sorry for me because of terrible things I went through as a child. And I accept the sympathy, especially if it means she's going to give me a kiss on the cheek or something, because she's a pretty lady. And I like it when she gives me kisses on the cheek. But really, I had to back her up and say, a lot of what I went through gave me skills that I never would have had if I hadn't gone through that, right? Does anybody else understand what I'm saying? Has anybody else gone through, something that felt like hell at the time, but it actually gave you a superpower? So I think that, ultimately what happens in business, honestly, is that a lot of those people that have that ability to, grow up in a crack-infested neighborhood and then next thing you know, they're a multimillionaire, those people just have these amazing superpowers where you could put that person, you could take away all their money and put them in a space with somebody else who has nothing just like them, and they're just going to figure it out, right? They're going to solve the problem. And next thing you know, they're going to have all the money again. So what I really want is I want you to understand, that two things definitely can exist at the same time, right? Structural racism and all that stuff can exist at the same time, especially when you're trying to go into a white man's world and get the white man's money. That's his system. That's his house. You're going to have to deal with his limitations, his barriers, all that. But I need you to also understand that, there's a difference between sort of having walls that are there that are just blocking you no matter what versus scenarios where you were victimized because you were simply unprepared to compete. Right? So I need you to ask yourself, how many of our people are victimized, economically and otherwise, because they were just unprepared to compete? They grew up as children. Nobody taught them anything about, any of this stuff. They don't even know how to, you could hit them in the head with $1 million worth of stock. They wouldn't know what to do with it because nobody ever told them why stock is valuable, why you'd want to own it, right? Or then maybe you could give them an opportunity to own a house, but they're not going to pay attention because they don't see any value in home ownership, right? Or you could tell them like, hey, if you take a pay cut on your $20 an hour job, you can actually get a percentage of a multi-million-dollar business. A lot of people would walk right past those opportunities because they don't even know what an opportunity looks like because it didn't come in the form of a white man offering them a paycheck. That's the only thing they see. So in a way, I compare it to food, right? I don't know how to cook, right? I don't know how to cook. So I'll go in the kitchen. Now, mind you, I'm marrying a beautiful black woman who can cook her butt off, and she got a nice butt, and she could cook it the whole thing off because she's that good of a cook. I promise you. So here's the thing. So we would go in the kitchen, and I would look in the refrigerator and look in the pantry, and it'll be full of food and full of stuff, and I'll close it and I'll say, "Gosh, I'm hungry," and she'd be like, "Okay, why don't you eat something?" And you know what I'll say? I'll say, "There's nothing to eat." And you know what she'll say? She'll come in and be like, "Boys, what are you talking about? There's onions here, there's carrots, there's steak, there's this, there's that, whatever." Right? And the reason that we look at those opportunities in different ways, she sees an abundance of opportunity. I see no opportunity. Well, what's the difference? Why is it that I can look in that same refrigerator she looks in and say, "Oh gosh, I'm hungry, there's no food," but she sees food everywhere? Well, it's because she knows how to cook. She knows how to identify opportunity in areas that I don't, right? So for example, when I see something that's frozen, that's not, I can't eat that because I can't microwave it, right? If you show me something that has to be, put together with a recipe, well, I can't do that because nobody ever taught me how to make anything, right? I can boil water, right? So a lot of times with wealth, the people that have the most wealth are the people that know how to take all the raw materials in the closet and in the pantry and say, "Oh my God, there is so much opportunity in here." And people who don't know wealth can look at that same situation, be born in the middle of that situation, and see absolutely nothing, see a desert of despair, right? Think about this. Why is it that white people have moved into neighborhoods that you've lived in for 50 years and gentrified them and turned them into multi-million, multi-billion dollar properties? How did they do that? Did they come in at gunpoint and say, "We're going to take all your property, and if you own it, we're going to..." No, a lot of that was stuff that you didn't even want, because you didn't see any value in that space, because you weren't raised in a space where you were taught that real estate was valuable, right? Now, there are people who were taught that, like Kenny Gamble out in Philadelphia. You know what Kenny Gamble did? Kenny Gamble's very famous. He wrote 3,000 songs with Gamble and Huff. They were the Motown of Philadelphia, basically. They created the whole Philadelphia sound, right? And so Kenny Gamble got his first record deal, and Kenny Gamble went to his old neighborhood where all the houses were cheap that nobody wanted, and Kenny bought everything he could get his hands on. Everything. So now Kenny owns millions of dollars worth of really valuable property where white people want that. They're salivating over that property now. They want to go and buy everything up and put in a dog park and a Whole Foods and a Starbucks, but they can't do it because Kenny Gamble was ahead of the curve. He bought all this in the 1970s, back when many of his friends, including his friends who had money, saw no opportunity. They were all trying to go to the suburbs. Right? They were all trying to get away from what was valuable to go toward what was cheap. Right? So ultimately, what I will say to you is that, why am I telling you this story? Because you cannot underestimate the importance of knowledge, preparation, culture, and value systems when it comes to the wealth building process. If you do not have a family that values the idea of building wealth, then your family will never build wealth. I never valued the idea of knowing how to cook. So I can't cook anything. I'm totally dependent on Alicia to cook for me because it was never important for me in graduate school to sit down and go through recipes and learn how to cook. I just didn't care, right? So a lot of our folks can't build wealth because they just don't care. But if you give them the chance to go memorize some Cardi B lyrics or Beyonce's new remix to Megan Thee Stallion songs, oh, they on top of that. They spend half the day doing a Beyonce left cheek, right cheek challenge because that's important to them. It's all about values. And the thing is, there's no space in mainstream conversation to really talk about this because you're all caught up nationally in this left-wing, right-wing ideology, right? Where you're either super hard on black people and letting white people off the hook, or you treat black people like infants, like infants or disabled children who can't accomplish anything without the help of white people. I'm not on either one of those sides. I'm the guy in the middle who says, come on, man, we can do better. We can try harder. Why don't we, that child's in your house. They're probably going to be influenced by what you teach them. So what are you going to talk to that child about right now? Well, that 10-year-old, when she comes in my room, we talk about the pillars of wealth. I say, okay, what are the ways that people get rich? She'll say, okay, owning stocks, real estate, and owning a business. Okay, so when you grow up and you become a great singer like Beyonce, how are you going to be able to go out here and succeed in the entertainment industry? Well, I'm going to own the production company, and I'm going to make myself the star, because when I make movies, I'm going to make my own movies, and I'm going to learn to finance my own movies and understand the business, right? We have those little conversations because I know that when she gets 20, 25 years old and she's in the game of competitive economics that everybody else is playing, she's gonna have somebody that's gonna try to play her. There's somebody's going to try to take her in as a slave, and the big fundamental question is going to be, well, did your daddy prepare you to fight? And she will be able to say, yes, my daddy prepared me for all of this. I'm completely ready. But there's going to be some other little girl sitting next to her whose daddy didn't prepare her, and she's going to go right down those ugly rabbit holes that exist in the entertainment industry. Do you follow what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, so let me answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to have to go, because speaking of family, my family's out there and they're waiting on me, so I got to go and be a good dad, be the best dad I can be. All right, so let's see here. David says, if you have low debt and high disposable income, what percentage of your disposable income or cash should you invest? There's no hard and fast rule, but somebody might say, you can pick a number like 20% or something like that. I would sort of figure out what your financial goals are and then work backward to figure out what percentage of your income you need to invest in order to try to reach those goals. And if the percentages don't give you what you want, remember, you always have the option of increasing your income, right? A lot of times people, when they put together budgets, they're always talking cut, 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 cut. Well, I don't think you always have to have a scarcity mindset. There is money out there to be made. I've seen people change their whole lives by getting a little side hustle where they're making an extra $2,000 a month. And that makes the whole, financial equation completely different, because they're then able to, save with the side hustle money and spend their entire paycheck and still be okay, right? So, figure out, like, learning ways to make a little bit of extra money can go a really long way. Okay, not including Bitcoin and Ethereum, what are some of the best cryptocurrencies to get into right now? You know what, Blue Gray? I'm big. I own a lot of XRP, and I bought a bunch of other cryptos. I can't remember. I would read the reports and say, okay, that looks good, and I'd add it to my portfolio. But right now, those are the ones I remember. I remember XRP. That was the one I really hoped for the most, that would actually move the most, and it hasn't done what I wanted to yet. But I think that cryptocurrency is a good long-term investment. So I have a small percentage of my portfolio in crypto, but not a big percentage. So don't overinvest in crypto, because it can be messy. Your stock messages and information speak to long-term wealth building, real estate investing, etc. Says Geo, I think you missed the boat when you exclude us seniors. Any thought in considering this crowd? Okay. Thank you for letting me know that, and I take that critique very seriously, and I apologize if I made the seniors feel left out. The seniors come into play in a couple areas. Number one, just because you're a senior citizen, you and I both know that doesn't mean you're going to be dead soon. You've got a lot of years of living left, and you also have the ability to wait out the storm on a lot of dips in the market, right? And so, because most dips in the market, most bear markets don't last more than 14 months. So most senior citizens are going to live longer than 14 months. Right? A lot of you are going to live another 10, 20, 25 years. It depends. So I wouldn't be afraid of investing. And I would also think all these things that I'm saying about long-term wealth potential, a lot of things can happen over a 10-year period. A lot of wealth can be built over a 10-year period. So if you're 65, that means your life expectancy is not what everybody else's is, right? The fact that you made it to 65 automatically extends your life expectancy because you made it. A lot of your friends didn't make it, right? And so at that point, that means you might have another 15 or 20 years left that, to consider. So I think that a lot of the principles that we talk about in terms of investing for everybody apply for seniors. The main difference is that seniors tend to focus on things like dividend paying stocks so they can generate income, maybe lower risk stocks so you're not dealing with as much volatility. And then also you have to think about transition, like making sure that, you talk to a lawyer about sort of, two things. One, what's going to happen while I'm here and what's going to happen when I'm gone, right? So meaning while I'm here, if my health declines and I go into a nursing home, how do I make sure the nursing home doesn't just take all my assets that I might have left for my kids and grandkids? Maybe I can do a trust or something like that to protect those assets. Number two, after I'm gone, that trust can be a vehicle to make sure that there's a good transfer of those assets, right? So understand understanding, your role as a wealth builder as part of the family process, I think is really, really important. And don't think that just because you don't benefit the most financially out of everyone, that means that it's not relevant for you. Wealth building is a team sport. Most people that are doing well in America are doing well because of somebody who's not here anymore, right? So all of you are going to die. Like all of us are going to die. We know this, right? And so the question is, is somebody going to be better off because you were here? I had an uncle named Charles, and I saw him a year and a half ago, and he came to my house, and my whole family was there, and it was really, really great. And I love my Uncle Charles. He was just like me, and Uncle Charles was dead 3 months later. He was on his way home from work. It was his anniversary, his 45th anniversary. And it was also his wife's birthday, and 2 days from his sister's birthday. And his mother's birthday was the following week. So it was like a really bad time for him to die. But, the Grim Reaper doesn't care. And he died on the road. He had an accident. And so, one thing I can say, though, that made me really proud, like I was super proud of him because I knew 10 years before. My Uncle Charles had talked to me when he was about 48 years old, 49, and he said that he was struggling, with credit. Like his credit had gone bad. He'd run into a lot of debt. He'd lost his house. A lot of bad things had happened financially that he was worried about. And I remember saying to him, just kind of encouraging him and saying, it's okay. You're not out of the game. You're not out of the game. Keep going. Just work, rebuild piece by piece. And that's what he did. That's exactly what he did. So 10, 12 years later, he dies, right? Neither one of us knew when we had that conversation that he was going to be dead a few years later. And my Aunt Janice comes to me, and my aunt says, your uncle really prepared for us in death. And I said, what do you mean? She said, did you know that he had not one, not two, but I think he had 3 different life insurance policies with like big money attached, so they were going to be very good financially. And because of the way he died, there was a lawsuit, involved as well. So there was a lot of money, and it really made me feel very proud, that my uncle went out in a way that took care of the people he loved, right? It wasn't something ghetto where we're all at the funeral begging the congregation to make donations to a GoFundMe account. It wasn't something silly or ridiculous where, he didn't prepare for anything. This man got ready for the transition and did it in a way that made me just so proud, to the point where I was almost in tears when I heard about it. So I would just say to you, just remember that, when you're talking about life and death and all that, we go to church and they always talk about the afterlife, and unfortunately, we talk about it in a selfish way. We're always talking about heaven and what rewards we're going to get when we go see Jesus and everything else. To make sure that those people are in good economic shape. So make sure you prepare. Don't think of wealth building as a one-off or a one-person sort of endeavor. Like I'm just going to do well for me so I can go buy me a Lamborghini. If that's kind of how you think, I'm not anti-Lamborghini. You can go buy your Lambo if you want to. But, I think if you think that way, I feel like you're missing a lot. Like, I think that there's so much more to the process that matters to us as Black people, in terms of, think about this. We've been on a 400 quest for our freedom, a 400-year quest for our freedom, and that freedom is deeply attached to our economic situation. Many of us have a white person in mind that we would probably cuss out and turn in, a pink slip to if we had enough money in the bank. So why not give your children the power and ability to do what you could not